so capable and able, so capable and able, so capable and able. My life ain't so stable, my life ain't so stable, my life ain't so stable. Hear this. I'm so capable and able.
It is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden at Addis Ababa. People who see this throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath.
Rastafari. Oh, Jaja, let it be your mercy unto us. Oh, yes, oh, Jah, and bless us.
For those of you who are aware, it is July 23rd. And it marks the 128th birth anniversary of Emperor Haile Selassie I. So I'm going to be sharing a little bit of history with you. I want to say good afternoon to my brother and my friend, Brother Omar Culture. I see you on the live. And for those of you who want more information about Emperor Haile Selassie, you can check out Cosmic Vision. He's on YouTube with Cosmic Vision, the program. Of course, he shares knowledge week to week about Emperor Haile Selassie I in Selassie I's Corner. The brother is good at what he does. Like everyone else, he is learning. And of course, with faith, love, and courage, David will still slew Goliath in the 20th century. The boy child, Tafari Makunen, was born on the 16th of Hamli, 1884, also known as July 23rd, 1892, in Babylonian calendar time, in the year of John of Ishra, Guru near Hara. His birth had been foretold by astrologers and chaplains. They reasoned that planets Neptune and Pluto was intersecting in July 1892, having started moving towards each other 493 years earlier in 1399. This would in turn influence the constellation Leo, that is the house of Judah. His father was Ras Makunen and his mother was Wizaro Yasminabet. They also foretold the great drought that started in 1889 and was broken at the moment of the child's birth, thus confirming his identity and destiny. On the 40th day of his life, he was baptized according to custom and given the name Haile Selassie, which means power of the Trinity. At the moment of baptism, he became totally aware, although this knowledge faded at the time. It returned as he grew. His teachers were astounded at the depth of knowledge and understanding this child possessed, especially of ancient religious texts. He could also converse with animals, and savage beasts became docile in his presence. He was the only one of 10 siblings to survive childhood, and his mother died before he reached his second birthday. Tafari was raised by his father's cousin, Wazaro Ita Miriam, and her husband, Dijanmach Haile Selassie Abina, who, of course, had a 4-month-old child much younger than him, or 4 months younger than him. At the age of 7, Tafari and his cousin Emru began their education by learning to read and write in Amharic and Iziz. He also learned French, firstly from Dr. Vitilian, and also from Abba Samuel, for whom he had much love and respect. At the age of 13, on the 21st of Tekpet, 1898, or what we know as the 1st of November, 1905, his father, Ras Makunen, made his cousin, the regent, call Gawara Mutala, and following year, Ras Makunen died on the 13th of Magabet, 1998, or what we know as the 21st of March, 1906. Emperor Menelik Emperor Menelik gave governorship of Harare to his cousin Yelma Makonen's son from a previous relationship, and Tafari was given the governorship of Ethiopia.
Yeah, blessed day. This is Mr. Culture. Say welcome to Selassie Corner. Giving thanks, honor, and praise to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Selassie, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, conquering lion from the tribe of Judah, elect of God, the rightful ruler. And today is doctrines, my brother. Today is the King Earthstrong. You know, so it's a privilege to have the ability to do this program today. And I don't want to talk long, I will go straight to it. I just want you all to see these two clips before I go further. Is John F. Kennedy and Billy Graham introducing His Imperial Majesty. So let's get to it, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, I know I speak in behalf of all of my fellow Americans in welcoming His Imperial Majesty back to the United States. Since His Majesty visited the United States nearly a decade ago, we have seen one of the most extraordinary revolutions in history, and that has been the appearance on the world scene of 29 independent countries in the short space of less than 10 years, including over 150 million people. The conference recently held in His Majesty's capital served, I think, to bring together in a great cooperative movement the people of most of these countries. And the success of that conference was due in no small part to the leadership of our distinguished guest. His efforts to move his country forward and provide a better life for its people, and his efforts throughout the world, which stretch back over 30 or 40 years. For all of this, Your Majesty, we take the greatest pride in welcoming you here. You do us honor, and I can assure you that there is no guest that we will receive in this country that will give a greater sense of livelier pride and satisfaction to the American people than your presence here today. Your Majesty, you're most welcome.
When we were deciding about the program of this conference, there was one item that I was asked a little bit about, and that was what chief of state we might invite to come and greet us in the name of Christ. And we thought of several, but the one that kept coming back to our thoughts and our minds was that great country of Ethiopia, the land of the Queen of Sheba, referred to in the Old Testament as Punt. And we remembered the story in the book of Acts about the Ethiopian nobleman that was converted to Christ, baptized, and went back to Ethiopia with the gospel. And since that day, Christian kings and emperors have ruled in that enchanting and beautiful country. 35 years ago, there came to the throne Emperor Haile Selassie I. He established a written constitution. He established a parliament, a modern system of communication, built roads, hospitals, schools, and universities. And then the whole world became aware of him when, during the heroic days of the war, His Majesty is the protector of the state's Ethiopian Orthodox Church and is head of the church. And when he returned to his country on May the 5th, 1941, on that historic day, he announced to the world that in Ethiopia, Christian ethics in government, liberty of conscience, and democratic institutions would prevail in his country. The Emperor of Ethiopia is a man that goes regularly to church and is a worshiper of Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. When I had the privilege of being in Ethiopia for a campaign in Addis Ababa, When I spoke, all schools were closed, and the imperial family came and attended the services. And so we give a warm and hearty welcome in the name of Jesus Christ to our distinguished guest this morning, His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I.
All right, so there, so JFK introducing His Imperial Majesty, you saw Billy Graham introducing His Imperial Majesty. The reason I show these clips is come like it have two reasons. First, for you all to see the utter respect he gained around the world by every creed and race. There's no one that I know about that ever shows Imperial Majesty any form of disrespect face to face, personally. Alright? Now, with Billy Graham, you saw where Billy Graham said he's covered the earth to find somebody who can teach him about Christianity. No. What we know in this world is Catholicism. It isn't Christianity. And they all knew it. But Billy Graham actually went back to the land when it was called Kun. And he went back to Queen of Sheba to identify with His Imperial Majesty. Which, in saying that, is a fact that Billy Graham and them knew Jesus wasn't white. But that's not Selassie business per se. Because Selassie came to teach the doctrines of Jesus Christus, the black Christ, the biblical Christ, not the Christ of the world that they have us worshiping in false pretense. Alright, so this is the message here. JFK showed that there was no one on earth that he would have the honor and the privilege to have as his guest at that appointed date, but His Imperial Majesty. Billy Graham showed that to learn about the true Christianity, there's no one on earth, including the Pope, that could teach us about Christianity, but His Imperial Majesty. And these were two white men who knew who His Imperial Majesty was. I wouldn't say if they did honor him or not, but they acknowledged him. And right now it's difficult for his own people to acknowledge him, just like it was difficult for Jesus Christus' own people to acknowledge him. So you have to know who is our King of Kings and who is our Lord of Lords, or who is the King of Kings and who is the Lord of Lords. Alright, because the Christianity you all follow, the leaders of the churches know who they are. And they know they are encouraging you to worship cultism and Satan. They know. But they wouldn't educate you as such because that is not their business. Everything have a negative and a positive. Everything. God is positive, Satan is negative. And Satan is in full tilt right now to manipulate the world, and which is what he's doing successfully because it was written as such. So few will be chosen. If you choose to hear the word, which one are you? Okay, so let's take in some more doctrines here of His Imperial Majesty. Let me go through some.
He was probably the first African leader to be treated by white men as an equal. Now, in his old age, he's practically the incarnation of the history of our time. In Europe, the bloodiest of modern wars was being fought with tanks, machine guns, and poison gas. But here, the centuries rolled back as if to King Henry at Agincourt, or Richard losing his crown at Bosworth Field. Joining the new League of Nations, he put his faith in the latest post-war watchword, collective security. In such great company, one little country would surely be safe, and none would let another gobble it up. Instead, he hoped that all might compete in helping him to modernize his country and make it worthy of its place in the League. To extend his foreign contacts, he toured the European capitals. In London, the Times described his arrival as an historical event. In Stockholm, he met King Gustav, and the Swedes promised him doctors. In Brussels, he found financiers ready to invest in his country. Governors of Africa's colonial territories came to salute the independent African king. Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator, proclaimed he would create a new Roman Empire, and he aimed at the one place left for imperial conquest in Africa, Haile Selassie's Ethiopia. And Britain and France would do no more than proclaim an embargo on arms sales to both sides. For Italy, with her own arms, the embargo was a green light. For Ethiopia, it was a death sentence. But for Haile Selassie, the final betrayal came at the League of Nations. Pierre Laval, the French foreign minister, and Sir Samuel Hoare for Britain, proposed to hand part of Ethiopia to Mussolini. Appeasement had triumphed. Collective security was a myth. In the war that followed, Haile Selassie had no chance.
Ladies and gentlemen, the second speaker on the list is His Majesty the Negus Haile Selassie.
He did so with a dignity that has become a legend.
Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le...
The jeers of fascists in the gallery did not stop him. I am here to claim justice, he said. What reply shall I take back to my people? There was no answer, and there could be none. The League was dead. So, said the Emperor, it is us today, it will be you tomorrow. He created a network of tiny airstrips that broke down the isolation of the interior for the first time. When the 1950s opened, Ethiopian Airlines were in business. It was Haile Selassie's first major accomplishment in modernizing his country. Ethiopia's past for the first time came to the aid of the present and made Haile Selassie and his capital the focus of Africa's new hopes. As almost the only independent African ruler after the war, Haile Selassie provided a symbol of self-respect for black men just emerging from white rule. The wind of change had come to Africa. Recognizing the emperor's unique position, the United Nations chose Addis Ababa as its African headquarters, and he embarked on a new political career.
The age in which we live, Your Imperial Majesty, is an age of paradox.
In his brand new Africa Hall, Haile Selassie presided at innumerable meetings of his new revolutionary colleagues. He became the great African father figure, the great African peacemaker, in the Congo, in Biafra, in Morocco and Algeria. It was a strange apotheosis for the King of Kings. He didn't always succeed, but his voice commanded respect, because he alone in Africa had been both victim and victor in the struggle against colonial rule. He alone had been the first martyr of the old League of Nations and was now a founder and guide of the new United Nations. Seeing his influence in the new Africa, the world beat a path to his door. The Organization of African Unity followed the United Nations and set up shop in Addis Ababa. Diplomats and businessmen flocked in. Within a decade, the face of Addis Ababa was transformed. The signs of international affluence towered over the old open drains. With the bankers and diplomats came foreign money and foreign aid. There were new ports, new roads, new dams to be opened. America trained the emperor's army. Russia built his schools. Israel provided technicians. India supplied teachers. Britain brought doctors. France offered culture. Germany sent trade missions. Haile Selassie's old empire had become the new African showcase, and everyone wanted an exhibit there. Today, Haile Selassie is besieged by foreign delegations hoping to catch his ear. He balances these contemporary forces to strengthen his own independence as shrewdly as he juggled half a century ago with the rival tribes and princes in his old fight for power. One day it may be a Japanese delegation, the next day a mission from Maoist China. It doesn't matter what political persuasion they are, they all see Haile Selassie as an essential link to the rest of Africa. Even with Italy, he's made friends again. On a state visit to Rome, 30 years after Mussolini's troops had been driven from his country. His name is everywhere. His presence seems all-pervading. His word seems law. In his old age, it looks as if Haile Selassie has routed all his enemies at last, to emerge supreme, as if the all-wise and benevolent Lion of Judah has prevailed. Nearly half the population of Ethiopia now is under the age of 15, and for Haile Selassie their education has always been an obsession, and turned one of his palaces into a university. He's directly responsible for whatever schooling these youngsters get. Haile Selassie is a lonely man now. His wife, 2 sons, a daughter are all dead. To have survived them for the better part of 55 years in power is something unequaled by any ruler in the world today. No wonder the Lion of Judah has become one of the living legends of our time.
Give us the teaching of His Majesty, and we don't want no devil philosophy. His Imperial Majesty taught us that He followed the ways of Jesus Christus. You got to know who is Jesus Christus to follow His ways, because the white Jesus have nothing to do with Jesus Christus, but they have all to do with Satanism and Catholicism, and the Christianity of this world is Catholicism. Okay, we're taking our next step here again.
In the 1920s, the powerful warlords of Ethiopia were coming to the realization that a young man of the nobility named Haile Selassie, also known as Rastafari, was outcompeting them all and nearing the point where he could proclaim himself as their leader, unifying the country for the first time in decades. Most of his rivals could not understand how this wispy, quiet, mild-mannered man had been able to take control. Yet in 1927, Selassie was able to summon the warlords one by one to come to Addis Ababa to declare their loyalty and recognize him as leader. Some hurried, others hesitated, but only one, a warlord by the name of Balcha, dared to defy Selassie totally. Balcha was a blustery man and a great warrior, and he considered the new leader to be weak and unworthy. Finally, Selassie, in his gentle but stern way, commanded Balcha to come. The warlord decided to obey, but in doing so he would turn the tables on this pretender to the Ethiopian throne. He would come to Addis Ababa at his own speed and with an army of 10,000 men, a force large enough to defend himself, perhaps even start a civil war. Stationing this formidable force in a valley 3 miles from the capital, he waited, as a king would. Selassie would have to come to him. Selassie did indeed send emissaries asking Balcha to attend an afternoon banquet in his honor. But Balcha was no fool. He knew history. He knew that previous kings and lords of Ethiopia had used banquets as a trap. Once he was there and full of drinks, Selassie would have him arrested or even murdered. To signal his understanding of the situation, he agreed to come to the banquet, but only if he could bring his personal bodyguard, 600 of his very best soldiers, all armed and ready to defend him and themselves. To Balcha's surprise, Selassie answered with the utmost politeness that he would be honored to play host to such warriors. On the way to the banquet, Bolcher warned his soldiers not to get drunk and to be on their guard. When they arrived at the palace, Selassie was his charming best. He deferred to Bolcher, treating him as if he desperately needed his approval and cooperation. But Bolcher refused to be charmed, and he warned Selassie that if he did not return to his camp by nightfall, his army had orders to attack the capital. Selassie reacted as if he was hurt by this mistrust. Over the meal, when it came time for the traditional singing of songs in honor of the Ethiopian leaders, he made a point of allowing only songs honoring the warlord Bolcher. It seemed to Bolcher that Selassie was scared, intimidated by this great warrior who could not be outwitted. Sensing the change, Bolcher believed that he would be the one to call the shots in the days to come. At the end of the afternoon, Bolcher and his soldiers began their march back to the camp amidst cheers and gun salutes. Looking back to the capital over his shoulder, he planned his strategy. How his soldiers would march through the capital in triumph within weeks, and Selassie would be put in his place being either prison or death. When Bolcher came inside of his camp, however, he saw that something was terribly wrong. Where before there had been colourful tents stretching as far as the eye could see, now there was nothing, only smoke from doused fires. What was going on? A witness told Bolcher what had happened. During the banquet, a large army, commanded by an ally of Selassie, had stolen up on Bolcher's encampment by a side route that they hadn't seen. This army had not come to fight, however, knowing that Bolcher would have heard a noisy battle and hurried back with his 600-man bodyguard. Selassie had armed his own troops with baskets of gold and cash. They had surrounded Bolcher's army and proceeded to buy every last one of their weapons. Those who refused were easily intimidated. Within a few hours, Bolcher's entire force had been disarmed and scattered in all directions. Realizing his danger, Bolcher decided to march south with his 600 soldiers to regroup, but the same army that had disarmed his soldiers blocked their way. The other way out was to march to the capital, but Selassie had sent his army to defend that. Like a chess player, he had predicted Bolcher's moves and had checkmated him. For the first time in his life, Bolcher surrendered. To repent of his sins of pride and ambitions, he agreed to enter a monastery. Bolcher's last words as he entered the monastery were, "Do not underestimate the power of Tafari. He creeps like a mouse, but he has jaws like a lion." Throughout Selassie's long reign, no one could quite figure him out. Ethiopians liked their leaders fierce, but Selassie, who wore the front of a gentle, peace-loving man, lasted longer than any of them. Never angry or impatient, he lured his victims with sweet smiles, lulling them with charm and obsequiousness before he attacked. In the case of Bolcher, Selassie played on the man's wariness, his suspicion that the banquet was a trap, which in fact it was, but not the one that he expected. Selassie's way of allaying Bolcher's fears, letting him bring his bodyguard to the banquet, giving him top billing there, making him feel in control, created a thick smokescreen, concealing the real action that was happening 3 miles away. The paranoid and the wary are often easy to deceive. If you win their trust in one area, you have a smokescreen that can blind them in another. Properly set up, the smokescreen is a weapon of great power. It enabled the gentle Selassie to totally destroy his enemy without even firing a single bullet. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, guys. This was an excerpt from one of my favorite books, which is The 48 Laws of Power. There's so many great stories.
Alright, so you understand? He make like a mouse, but he draws like a lion. He knows everything, because he's the Word. He was there from the beginning till the end. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and it became flesh. This is Mr. Culture on behalf of Cosmic Vision and Selassie Corner. Do have a blessed day, and thanks and praises to His Imperial Majesty. I love my King. Selah.
I see the heavens declare your glory, yeah, oh, and the firmament show it is handiwork, yeah. Selassie I facing the moon, the moon, the moon. I knew that it's coming soon, so soon, yeah. Selassie I facing the moon, the moon, the moon. I know that it's coming soon, so soon, yeah. So all pestilence we walk afternoon, and the reptilian who are wear them costume. Who don't want the youth them fi bloom. So them kill every prophet when them sing them tune. Lick them with the rod, sweep them with broom. Them entice black woman with them sweet perfume. The strength of the battle is set fi rise soon. It's time to get in tune, yeah. Selassie I facing the moon, the moon, the moon. I know that it's coming soon, so soon, yeah. Selassie I facing the moon, the moon, the moon. I know that it's coming soon, so soon, yeah. Say don't be fooled, black woman, don't ignore him. Everything and every nation have to bow before him. This great king from Africa, me call him, cause all other gods, they are alien and foreign. Hey Rastafari, your devotion in the morning. No left him, none at all, black empress, keep him as your darling. No trust none of them man in the daylight when them walking, cause say them are the demon and the angels who are falling. As Selassie I face.